Donald Trump just won the election. What now? Well, in 2015 and 2016, when he won for the first time, one of my favorite statements that I always saw was, you never kick a man while he's standing. It's looking like Republicans are going to take the Senate. It's looking like they're going to keep the House. With Donald Trump now winning the popular vote and having a clear mandate, he's already talking about all the executive orders that he's going to be pushing. So if you're Donald Trump, what is the strategy? You now have the best cabinet any presidency has ever seen, with some of the hardest workers, some of the true believers in America, and Trump loyalists who are going to be enacting policies and pushing narratives to completely destroy and gut the deep state. So Donald Trump's goal is to not only issue as many executive orders as possible, whether the courts fight them or not, but to ram as much legislation through as possible. So what does that look like? That means upon January 6th and January 20th, you're going to see multiple executive orders a day and immediate legislation targeting probably some key issues such as voter ID, immigration, taxes, and war, and dismantling the administrative state, hopefully through Congress, but through executive order, all at the same time. Because the Democrats are still going to put up a fight. The administrative state is still going to put up the fight. But the one thing that we've learned is that lawfare in American politics is king. But lawfare is only as powerful as you want it to be. For example, if Trump starts cutting federal workers and they decide to sue and they try to stay, Trump can simply say, well, I'm still not letting you stay. I'm denying your key cards, and deal with the lawsuits later. Lawfare only works if you listen to the judges. And there's time and time and again when Democrats and Republicans try to push the envelope and simply say, well, we're not going to abide by that judge's order. Here's what we're going to do instead. And of course, the judge may come after them and sanction them, but the problem is it still delays the process. So one of the strategies for lawfare is to delay things as long as possible. I've talked about that when I've talked about passing the anti-CBDC legislation and how that would prevent CBDCs from happening even on a state level. Democrats are going to do the same thing, because lawfare is how you can remain on the defensive and on the offensive when you're not in a position of power. So lawfare is going to be the most important thing that Democrats have to try to prevent Trump from enacting his will. But the counter to lawfare is not only more lawfare, but it's overwhelming the court system and an overwhelming amount of lawsuits, to the point where if you have the resources, they can't fight you on all fronts. The game is also different now because Republicans have the Supreme Court, and Republicans having the Supreme Court means that a lot of their decisions are going to be enacted quicker. And if they believe they have the legal jurisprudence to get things done, the Supreme Court will rule in their favor. We also have Chevron deference, which is a huge deal, because now we can encourage people to sue the federal government on the private side, and knowing that the Supreme Court is going to hold up Chevron deference, which essentially means if federal agencies weren't strictly mandated by Congress to have authority over certain regulations, then they cannot enforce those regulations. So from the private sector and the public sector, you are going to see a massive push from the inside and now from the outside to completely dismantle the administrative state. And there's multiple strategies around this. But if I know the Trump administration, and I've seen their previous strategies, they're going to do so much within the first 100 days, probably within the first 30 days, that puts people on the defensive to defend their institutions and defend their lines in the sand. They're going to essentially have to bow to that pressure. If Trump is able to use every executive appointment that he has to start pushing a narrative, which are all going to be reliable people this time, while also pushing people in Congress as well to pass legislation as quickly as possible, there will be so much overwhelming force that Democrats will simply not be able to do much. And the media can only make you panic and fuel rage on one issue at a time. That's one issue a day at least. But if there are so many issues all at once, they're not going to be able to be organized about it. Because that's where mainstream media is good, is isolating a narrative and carrying that narrative out as long as possible. But if there's constantly a new issue that the media is trying to excite you off of and make you feel like the world is ending, then they can't handle that actually. It doesn't do well for them, because it actually works inverse, where they start to demoralize their side into thinking that nothing can be done. Maybe it's good for ratings, but even with ratings, we see that demoralization, people start to tune out and turn things off. I think the Trump administration's ultimate strategy should be to be as aggressive as possible and do things that they know are going to cause lawsuits, because lawsuits and lawfare are going to work in their favor more so this time, with the amount of majorities and Supreme Court that Republicans have now, better than it has in the past.